So, a few weeks back, I made an impressions video on Star Trek Resurgence, the new narrative-driven adventure game from developer Dramatic Labs and publisher Brunner House. I'll link that video down in the description below, in case you want to watch it. But the short version is, this was one of my most anticipated games of the year, despite all the amazing titles that have already dropped and are going to continue to drop over the coming months. However, unfortunately, a lot of that anticipation was somewhat neutered by the release state of the game on consoles, specifically the PS4 version, and also some bad communication to customers regarding the lack of a native PS5 version. But to the devs' credit, since then, they've listened to feedback, and last week they dropped a patch for the console versions. So I thought it would be only fair to check it out and make a follow-up impressions video to see how things are looking. Well, let me tell you guys, even though this patch was not a dramatic overhaul and didn't drastically change the experience, after installing it, this game has gone from one of my biggest disappointments of 2023 to one of my favourite games of the year. So, full disclosure, thanks to Final Fantasy 16 and a few other bits and pieces, I haven't actually finished Resurgence yet, which is why this is another impressions video and not a full review. Secondly, in order to develop a detailed understanding of the game in its post-patch state, I started a brand new save and replayed everything I'd already played for my first impressions video. As of now, I'm about 5 or maybe 6 hours into the game, and I'm also planning a full review when I've finished it a few times, as I want to see how all the options play out, and I'd also like to get the 100% first before rendering a final judgment. So, enough setup, let's talk about the patch and how it's changed the game. Firstly, as I said at the start of the video, this patch is not a major overhaul of any specific element. The game still plays the same, and although a few of the visual issues have been fixed, and the ability to turn off motion blur has been added in the menu, which I think personally makes a big difference, it still looks a little bit budget and has plenty of jank and animation weirdness. Having said this, it's just crazy to me how much more immersive Resurgence is, and also how much better the great writing shines through now that its fundamental elements function properly. While there are still a few audio and subtitle bugs, every one I've come across since the patch has been very minor, and nothing on the pre-launch examples. Every choice now triggers correctly, the prompts all work as intended, audio lines trigger when they should and aren't cut off, and the audio has been rebalanced so there are no longer any distracting changes in the background music or sound effects that drown out the dialogue. What all of this means is that any potential jankiness is now overshadowed completely by the game's aforementioned excellent writing, dialogue and voice acting, all of which are stellar. Also, with these fundamentals fixed and the game functioning in a playable state, it becomes clear very quickly that the team who made this understand what Star Trek is, and also have an adoration for what I consider to be the franchise's golden era. Characters feel like actual adult members of Starfleet that, use science and logic to solve problems and discuss moral and social issues that are laced throughout the narrative. They're not quippy, annoying morons who talk to each other like teenagers.
Ready for some fancy flying, Erica?
Oh, you know I've got this.
Also, the narrative itself is interesting, dealing with clear moral questions and also themes and subtle callbacks for fans of Next Generation, Deep Space Nine, Voyager, and even the original series. Throughout the story, you take control of either Jara Rydek, a newly appointed first officer of the USS Resolute, a ship that recently lost a lot of crew in a warp field accident, or Carter Diaz, a lower-level engineer who has been with the Resolute since the original crew and before the accident. This allows for several great staples of classic Trek to play out. Diplomacy and command when you're playing as Jara, and science, engineering and problem solving when you're playing as Diaz. Also, the dual protagonist setup gives the game an A and B plot feel, which was often employed in old Trek. Now, before I wrap this up, it's worth reiterating that this game won't be for everyone, and no amount of patching is going to change that. Star Trek Resurgence is at its best in its slower, dialogue-driven moments, and if you're not here for that, it's probably not for you. There is action, but most of it is passable at best and very janky at worst. I said in my last impressions video that this was a lot like an early Telltale game, and the more I play, the more that description feels accurate. Also, as a final note, this patch is listed as fixing these issues on console versions, but I only have the PS4 version. I've tested it on PS4 Pro and also through backwards compatibility on PS5, but if you're on Xbox or even PC, your mileage may vary. But having said all of this, if this does sound like something you'd like, or if you're a fan of old Trek and its focus on great dialogue, characters, moral and philosophical deconstruction, and scientific problem solving, then the post-patch version of Star Trek Resurgence might be worth looking into. Anyway, that's my update on Star Trek Resurgence. Hope this was helpful, and if you did enjoy it, then maybe stick around and hit the old subscribe button or whatever. Till the next time, guys, stay safe out there.
Hey kid, don't Don't ever let them get inside your head. They'll tell you what to do in life instead of everything you know that you could get. Don't let them guide your life towards regret. I'll fight for what I love with every breath. My past is filled with things I won't forget.